My name is Sarah. I'm 26 years old now, and I need to tell you a story that I've kept mostly to myself for 3 years. A story that changed everything I thought I knew about safety and trust. A story that proved to me that the most dangerous people are often the ones living right beside us. 3 years ago, I witnessed something that should have been impossible to see. I watched my neighbor commit a crime that I still have nightmares about. A crime that I discovered completely by accident. A crime that almost made me the next victim. This is one of those stories that proves evil doesn't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it hides right next to you. Sometimes it sleeps in the house right beside yours. And sometimes you only discover it by pure chance. If you love true horror stories about real crimes and survival, hit like and subscribe right now because you're about to hear something that will change how you see your neighborhood. And keep listening because the night I looked out my bedroom window will teach you something that could save your life. It will teach you that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides behind a calm exterior. Sometimes it wears a human face and speaks in a normal voice. Sometimes it asks you for help. I need to start at the very beginning because context is absolutely everything in this story. My boyfriend and I had rented a small but comfortable house together about 4 months before everything happened. It was a decision we made when we were still hopeful and excited about the future. We'd been dating for 3 years at that point, and we thought we were ready to take the next step. We thought we were ready to build a life together. We had rented the house specifically because it was in a quiet neighborhood. It was supposed to be safe. The real estate agent kept emphasizing that word, safe. The houses were well maintained. The streets were tree-lined. There were no bars on any windows, no security gates. It was the kind of neighborhood where you could leave your door unlocked and nothing would happen. Or so everyone said. The house itself was nice. It was a 2-story structure painted a light gray color with white shutters. It had a moderately sized living room with an open kitchen area that flowed together naturally. The kitchen had granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. My boyfriend had been excited about the kitchen. He wanted to cook more. He wanted us to eat home-cooked meals together. My bedroom was upstairs. There was a guest bedroom beside it, which I converted into my workplace when the lockdown happened. That's when everything changed. That's when my boyfriend got stuck at his apartment across town and I got stuck in this house, alone. The lockdown happened in March. It was supposed to be temporary. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's what everyone said, but 2 weeks turned into months. And months turned into a year, and I was stuck in this house with my boyfriend on the other side of town. We could video call, but we couldn't touch. We could see each other's faces, but we couldn't be in the same room. I worked from home as a graphic designer for a publishing company. My job was to create cover designs for books. It was creative work, but it was also isolating work. I would sit in that guest bedroom for 8 hours a day, staring at my computer screen, making design choices that nobody would really care about. The backside of the house was probably the best feature. There was a beautiful big tree in the garden that grew scented yellow flowers that would bloom in summer. The flowers smelled amazing, sweet and floral. It was the kind of place where you could sit outside and just breathe and feel calm and safe. There was also a small garden beside the tree where I had planted some herbs and vegetables. Basil, tomatoes, peppers. I had wanted to grow my own food, but I never imagined that tree would become the center of something horrifying. I never imagined that the garden where those beautiful flowers grew would become connected to a crime scene. I never imagined that the place I thought was safest would end up being the most dangerous. Right beside my house, separated by maybe 30 feet of space, was another house. It was an older house, painted a faded beige color. The paint was peeling in places. The landscaping was overgrown. It looked like the kind of house where nobody took care of things anymore. A middle-aged married couple lived in that house. They were probably in their 50s or 60s. I didn't know their names. I didn't know much about them at all except what I heard through the walls. But I heard them constantly. I heard them fighting nearly every single night. I heard them arguing about things I couldn't quite make out. I heard the woman screaming at her husband in a voice filled with pain and anger. The screaming would sometimes last for hours. It would start around 6 o'clock in the evening and go on until late at night. It was the kind of fighting that makes you uncomfortable. The kind of fighting where you can hear the genuine anger and the deep hurt in every single word. The kind of fighting that makes you wonder if violence is coming, if someone is going to get hurt. I would listen from my house and I would try to ignore it. I would turn up my music or turn on the television, but the sounds would still get through somehow. The walls weren't that thick. Most of the neighbors probably heard them too. But like me, they all just tried to ignore it. No one wanted to get involved. No one wanted to confront them. This was the lockdown. Everyone was stressed. Everyone was going crazy in their own ways. Everyone was dealing with their own problems. Who were we to judge another couple's problems? Who were we to interfere? That was the attitude in the neighborhood. That was the culture. Mind your own business. Don't get involved. Don't make waves. It was a Saturday night during the lockdown in summer. The summer of 2020. Late July, to be specific. The weather had been oppressively hot all week. The kind of heat where you don't want to move. Where you don't want to do anything except stay inside with the air conditioning. I was sitting in my living room talking to my boyfriend on a video call. We were both upset that we couldn't be together. The pandemic had separated us. He was supposed to have moved in with me by now, but the coronavirus outbreak had made that impossible. His lease had been extended. My landlord wasn't going to break our rental agreement. So we were stuck on opposite sides of the city. We talked about missing each other. We talked about how unfair the lockdown was. We talked about our plans for when we could finally be together again. We had dreams of going to restaurants again, of traveling, of visiting his family out of state. But mostly, we just looked at each other's faces on the screen and tried to pretend it was almost the same as being in the same room. It wasn't. It could never be. My boyfriend and I were on the call when I noticed something odd. The weather outside had changed dramatically. The afternoon had been cloudy, but now a thunderstorm was building. The sky was getting darker and darker. The wind was picking up. I could hear it rattling the windows. The trees in the backyard were starting to bend. I could see leaves and small branches being blown around. And something else was different. Something that I noticed but didn't fully register at the time. The neighboring couple was completely silent. I mentioned to my boyfriend that I hadn't heard them fighting all day. Usually they started yelling at each other in the afternoon. But that day, there was complete silence. It was almost eerie. My boyfriend said maybe they had finally worked things out. Maybe they had gotten some counseling or decided to try to make things better. Maybe the lockdown had given them time to reflect. Maybe they were trying to save their marriage. But I didn't believe that. I had heard them arguing too many times. I knew what their relationship sounded like. I knew the sound of their anger. The silence felt wrong somehow. It felt unnatural. It felt like the calm before a storm. And I don't just mean the weather storm that was building outside. After I finished the video call with my boyfriend, I went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. I was making a simple pasta with some vegetables. Nothing fancy, just something to eat. Within minutes of hanging up, the rain started picking up. It started getting really heavy. The drops were coming down so hard you could barely see through them. The clouds were dark and oppressive. The sky was almost black, even though it was only 8:30 at night. Then there was a sudden strike of lightning that was so close it was absolutely terrifying. The flash of light was blinding. It lit up the entire house in white for a split second. Every room was illuminated. Every shadow disappeared, then returned, even darker than before. The sound came immediately after. The thunder was deafening. The rumble shook the windows and the walls. It was the kind of sound that makes your heart jump out of your chest, that makes your entire body go rigid with fear. And then the power went out. The entire house went dark. All the lights died instantly. The television that had been on in the background went silent. The refrigerator stopped humming. The air conditioning shut off. Everything electronic stopped working. The house became silent, completely silent. I was standing alone in a new house in the middle of a thunderstorm with no electricity. My mind was already on edge from the silence next door. And now I was in complete darkness, except for the occasional flashes of lightning that would light up the kitchen for just a moment before plunging it back into darkness. I felt genuinely disturbed. My hands were shaking. I lit up a candle that I had bought just in case of emergencies and started searching through drawers for more candles so I would have some light. I was moving through the house cautiously when I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Someone was knocking on my door. I froze completely. Someone was at my door at night during a thunderstorm when my power was out, when I was alone. My heart started beating faster. It was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stood there listening. The knocking came again, harder this time, more insistent, more demanding. Boom, boom, boom. I walked close to the door, still holding the candle, and said in a hesitant voice, "Who is it?" No one replied. But I heard the knocks again. Louder now, more aggressive, like they were testing the strength of the door, testing how much force it would take to break it down. I said in a loud voice, "Who are you? What do you want?" A man's voice replied from the other side. He said in a panicked voice, "Ma'am, I live next door. My wife is not feeling well. Can you please open the door? I need help." Please. I recognized the man's voice. I'd heard that same man screaming at his wife several times from inside my house. I recognized the aggression in his voice, the way he would yell, the tone of someone who was used to being listened to, used to being obeyed. But now he was asking for help. He was saying his wife was sick. He sounded genuinely worried, or at least he sounded like he was trying to sound worried. The desperation in his voice sounded almost practiced, but something in my gut told me to be careful. Something in my instincts was screaming at me that this wasn't right, this was wrong. But he was asking for help. How could I refuse help to someone whose wife was sick? What if she was really dying? What if she needed medical attention? Immediately, I hesitated for a long moment. I looked through the peephole, but the exterior light was off because of the power outage, so I couldn't see anything. Just darkness. I unlocked the door slowly and opened it just a crack. A flash of lightning illuminated his face. He looked terrible. He was literally sweating despite the rain. His face was pale. His eyes were wide and wild. His hair was disheveled. His shirt was untucked. I could tell from his expression that something serious had happened. Or at least he wanted me to think something serious had happened. I asked in a worried voice what happened. "Is your wife okay?" The man replied that his wife wasn't feeling well and he needed to get some medicine for her. He spoke quickly. His words tumbled over each other. He said he didn't know what was wrong with her. He said she had just collapsed. He said he needed to go to the pharmacy or to the hospital, but he couldn't leave his dog alone in the house. He said the dog would get scared during the thunderstorm. He said dogs could have panic attacks. He said he was worried about his dog having a heart attack from the stress. He asked if I could keep an eye on the dog until he came back. He said it would only be for a little while, maybe an hour or two. He said he would be so grateful. He said he would owe me one. He said anything I needed, just ask. I thought about it for a moment. He wasn't asking much, just to watch his dog for a little while, just to make sure the dog was safe and not scared during the storm. It seemed like a reasonable request, a compassionate request, and I was a compassionate person. I couldn't say no to that. What kind of person would I be if I refused to help someone during a crisis? What if his wife really was sick? What if she needed medicine urgently? I said yes. I agreed to watch his dog. The man's relief seemed genuine. He said thank you so many times. He brought in his dog from his car. He'd apparently been carrying the dog the entire time he was standing at my door. It was honestly a really cute dog. A medium-sized mix with brown and white patches. It had sweet brown eyes. It had a friendly face that seemed to smile at me. It had a collar with a tag that said the dog's name was Max. But something was immediately off about the dog's behavior. Every time the man tried to grab the dog to calm it down before he left, it kept straying away from him. The dog kept moving to the opposite side of the living room. The dog was clearly uncomfortable. I was confused by this. A pet acting against its owner is not a common occurrence. Dogs usually stick close to the people they know. Dogs usually want to be near their owners. Dogs get anxious when their owners leave. But this dog seemed genuinely uncomfortable around this man. This dog seemed afraid. The dog would look at the man and then look away quickly. The dog's tail would droop. The dog would press itself against my legs as if trying to hide from the man. I was confused by this behavior. A dog doesn't usually act afraid of its owner unless there's a reason, unless the owner has been abusive, unless the owner has done something to make the dog afraid. It was quite evident that for some reason the dog didn't like that man. The dog was afraid of him. And animals have instincts. Animals can sense things. Animals can tell when something is wrong. Animals can tell when someone is dangerous. But I didn't say anything about it. I didn't want to seem rude. I didn't want to accuse him of anything. Who was I to judge? I just took the dog inside and locked the door. I watched the man driving away in his car through the window. His car disappeared into the darkness of the storm. What worried me most was that he had left his sick wife alone. But he was insanely concerned about the dog, even though the dog was clearly afraid of him. The priorities seemed backwards. If his wife was so sick that she needed medicine urgently, why was he so worried about the dog? Why wasn't he speeding to get her medicine? Why wasn't he more panicked? None of this made sense. But I didn't think much more about it at the time. I got busy cooking dinner again. The power was still out, but I had a candle and I could manage. I finished the pasta and sat down to eat with the dog beside me. The storm was growing heavier and louder. The rain was pounding on the roof. The wind was howling. The thunder was constant now. There must have been a huge power outage affecting the entire area because electricity was still not back on. I finished my dinner and gave the dog some food to eat as well. The dog seemed grateful. The dog ate quickly and then looked at me with these gentle eyes that seemed to ask if it was safe here. If this was a place where it could rest without fear. I was starting to feel uneasy. Something about this situation didn't feel right, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. The man had left his dog with me. That was normal. People do that. He had said his wife was sick. That could be true. He had gone to get medicine. That seemed logical. But the dog's fear, that was the thing that bothered me. That was the thing that kept nagging at my mind. My bedroom window faced the bedroom window of the neighboring house directly. I could see right into their bedroom from my bedroom. Around 9:30 at night, I took a candle upstairs and stood near the window. The storm had mostly passed by now, but the power still hadn't come back on. The rain was lighter, but still steady. The wind was calming down. The flashes of lightning had stopped, but I could still make out shapes in their bedroom from the occasional car headlights passing by on the street. I could see their bed clearly. I could see that someone was lying on it. I assumed it was the man's wife and that she was probably just sleeping or resting because she was sick. I assumed she was waiting for her husband to return with medicine. My sense of curiosity has always been quite low, so I didn't spend much time looking. I didn't want to be a voyeur. I didn't want to invade their privacy, even though I could see directly into their bedroom. I just went to bed. I gave the dog a place to sleep beside my bed. The dog seemed grateful and quickly fell asleep as if it finally felt safe. As if it knew it was protected now. As if it knew this was a place where nothing bad would happen to it. I don't exactly remember what time it was, but I woke up hearing a strange sound. I got up on my bed and went to the window and looked out into the darkness. I didn't know why I was looking. Something had woken me up and I felt compelled to check on the neighboring house. That's when I saw them. 2 people were standing in the bedroom of my neighboring house. The storm had stopped by now, but the power still hadn't come back on anywhere. The room was mostly dark, but there were the lights from a flashlight that someone was holding and I could make out figures moving. With the sound of voices, I figured it was a man and a woman. But the woman wasn't the wife. I was absolutely sure of that. I had heard the wife's voice so many times through the walls. This was a different woman's voice. I realized the man had come back, and it must have been him with someone else. Someone he had brought to his house. Someone who was helping him with something. But what was happening in that bedroom in the middle of the night? I looked at the clock and saw it was around 3 in the morning. I had been asleep for hours. I was about to look away and go back to bed when I saw something that made my entire body go rigid. My breath caught in my throat. My hands started shaking. The man and the woman were carrying a third person out of the room. I got closer to the glass to get a clearer look at what was happening. I needed to understand what I was seeing. Just then, the power came back on throughout the neighborhood. The lights in their bedroom suddenly flicked on. The room was suddenly illuminated in bright light, as if someone had turned on a switch. That's when my stomach dropped in absolute fear. That's when I realized what I was looking at. I could see clearly now. Everything was perfectly visible. Crystal clear. The man was indeed the husband from next door. I recognized his face, his build, his voice. But the woman he was with was not his wife. It was a completely unknown woman. I'd never seen her before in my life. She was younger than the wife. She had dark hair. She looked terrified and complicit at the same time. Like she wanted to run away, but she was in too deep to stop now, and both of them were carrying a person on their shoulders. I could easily make out that third person. It was the man's wife, but something was terribly wrong with her body. Her head was hanging down. Her arms were limp, her legs dragged on the floor, her throat was slashed badly. The blood had dried on her neck and her chest. There was blood on her nightgown. There was blood on her body. It was evident from the look of her body that she'd been dead for hours. Many hours. Probably since earlier that evening. Probably around the time the man came to my house asking for help. Probably while I was cooking dinner and talking to my boyfriend and trying to ignore the silence for hours. While I had been cooking dinner. While I had been going to bed. While I had been sleeping peacefully. While the dog had been sleeping peacefully beside my bed. The man's wife had been lying dead in that bedroom, and now they were moving her body. Now they were disposing of the evidence. Now they were trying to hide what they had done. I felt my heart stop. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I felt the room spin around me. I felt like I was going to be sick. I felt like I was going to scream. They didn't see me watching them from my window. But then the dog barked. The dog that had been sleeping peacefully beside my bed suddenly barked loudly. It was a loud bark that echoed through the quiet night. The dog had woken up. The dog had sensed something was wrong. The dog had sensed danger. The dog could sense that something terrible was happening. The man's head snapped in my direction. His eyes looked directly at my window. Our eyes met across the darkness and the space between our houses. For a moment, time seemed to stop completely. He saw me. He knew that I had seen. He realized that I knew. He knew that I knew what he had done. At that moment, everything became clear to me. The entire situation crystallized in my mind. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't random. The man had brought his dog to my house for a reason. He had wanted to create an alibi. He had wanted to be able to say that he had gone to get medicine for his wife, that he had been at his neighbor's house, that he was helping a neighbor, that he was nowhere near his wife when she died. And now that I had seen his secret, now that I had seen the dead body and the other woman, I was a problem. I was a witness. I was someone who could expose him and destroy his plans. I was someone who had to be dealt with. The man started moving toward his bedroom door. I didn't wait to see what he would do next. I turned and ran downstairs as fast as I could. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would break through my ribs. My legs felt weak. My breath came in short gasps. I knew this man had realized that I now knew his secret. I knew that if this man caught me, there was no way I was getting out of this situation alive. I was a witness to his wife's dead body. I was a witness to him and another woman moving that body. I had seen too much. I knew too much. I got to the main door, and moments later I heard the man banging on it. He was pounding on my door with his fists. Boom! 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 The door shook with each impact. The frame rattled. I was terrified that he would break through. He said in a loud but panicked voice, "Ma'am, I just came to get my dog. My friend is here to help me take my wife to the hospital. She's having a medical emergency. We might stay there for a while, so I would appreciate it if you open the door and return my dog to me. Please." But I could hear the lie in his voice. I could hear the desperation. I could hear the threat underneath the polite words. I could hear the calculation. He was trying to sound reasonable. He was trying to sound like everything was normal. He was trying to play the role of a concerned husband. But he had killed his wife. And now he was trying to silence me. I was positive whatever he was telling me was a lie. All he wanted now was for me to open the door so he could silence me. Like he had silenced his wife, like he was planning to silence me forever. I responded by telling him I was going to call the cops and that I knew the whole situation. I told him I'd seen everything from my window. I told him I'd seen his wife's body. I told him I'd seen the other woman. I told him it was over. The man banged on my door even harder. The door shook with the force of his fists. He was trying to break through. He was desperate now. His cover was blown. His plan was falling apart. He replied, "You're misunderstanding the situation. Why don't you just return my dog and mind your own business? Open this door right now. I'm warning you." But I could hear the anger in his voice now, the desperation, the violence underneath the words, the barely contained rage, the threat of what he would do to me if he got the chance. I double-locked my door so that he couldn't enter. I had one lock on the door, but I also had a chain lock, and I made sure that was secured as well. My hands were shaking as I did this. I had to try 3 times before I could get the chain to slide into place properly. Then I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. My fingers could barely work the touchscreen. I almost dropped the phone. I was panicking. I was barely able to speak, but I reported the incident to the dispatcher. I told her what I had seen. I told her about the dead body in the neighbor's bedroom. I told her about the woman helping to move the body. I told her about the man at my door trying to force his way in. I told her I was terrified. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me. She told me to stay inside and lock the doors. She told me that police were on their way. She told me to stay on the phone. As soon as I hung up the call, I heard footsteps running away from my door. Out of my window, I saw the man and the woman hopping into a car in their driveway. They were moving frantically. They were desperate to escape. They jumped into the car and drove away at high-speed tires screeching on the asphalt. When the cops came 10 minutes later, the man and the woman were nowhere to be found. But they did discover the wife's dead body laying on the bedroom floor. The body was in the exact position where I had seen it from my window. The investigation took weeks. The entire story unfolded as the cops investigated thoroughly. The man was having an affair with the woman I had seen that night. They had planned to murder his wife and make her disappear forever. They had planned to vanish her body without anyone ever knowing what had happened. The autopsy revealed that she had been beaten to death. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. She had been hit with something hard, multiple times. That's why the man had made up the story about his wife being sick. He had wanted to use me as an alibi for going out of his house that night. He would have returned to get his dog back and said something like his wife had left him, that she had run away, that she had been depressed and suicidal, that he had no idea where she went, that she must have run away during the storm when the power was out. After establishing that idea in my mind, that he had no knowledge of his wife's whereabouts, he would have moved out with the other woman. He would have disappeared. They would have started a new life together, and the wife would have been missing. Just another missing person case. Just another cold case. During the lockdown, people were hardly going out of their houses. They weren't looking for missing persons. They weren't checking on their neighbors. He would have been successful in his plan if he hadn't cared about his dog so much. The dog was the thing that saved my life. The dog was the thing that made the man come to my house. The dog was the thing that made me look out my window that night. The dog was the thing that barked and made the man realize I had seen something. The dog's discomfort and fear had been a warning sign that I should have noticed sooner. Without the dog, I would have been another victim. Without the dog, the man would have gotten away with murder. My boyfriend finally moved into the house the next day. It was honestly terrifying to stay in the house next door to where my neighbor had been murdered. It was terrifying to know that I had slept just a few hundred feet away from a dead body. It was terrifying to know that the man had planned to use me and possibly harm me to cover up his crime. The cops are still searching for the man and the woman to this day. They escaped that night and they haven't been found. I can only pray that they get caught soon. I can only hope that they face justice for what they did. I can only hope that the dead woman gets the closure and peace she deserves. But the scariest part of this entire experience isn't the dead body or the man at my door. The scariest part is knowing that this is happening right now. Somewhere in this world, someone is planning something terrible. Someone is hiding a secret. Someone is about to hurt someone they're supposed to love. And unless you're paying attention, unless you're observing your surroundings, unless you trust your instincts, you might never know what's happening right next door. That's what this story has taught me. That's what I want you to understand. Evil doesn't always announce itself. Evil doesn't always come from strangers in the dark. Sometimes evil lives right next to you. Sometimes evil wears a familiar face. Sometimes evil is the person you see every day. And if you see something wrong, if you feel something is off, if your instincts are screaming at you that something is not right, please listen to them. Please trust them. Because your instincts might be the only thing that saves your life. That dog saved my life, and I will never forget that.